Hi everyone, it's Russell here from The Presenter. I hope you're well. If you're watching this, then you may have already attended the webinar in which I presented this very same content. It's my top tips for online presenting, and that's of course something that we all now have to get to grips with. We are all in the midst of a crisis, this COVID crisis that has us on lockdown. It's really unfortunate. I'm crossing my fingers that everyone watching this is safe and that it will all be over soon and we can get back to presenting in person. But right now, we need to focus on how we can do a better job at presenting online, because that is the only option we have. If we still want to win that sales pitch, engage that new audience, share that new idea, then we need to be really good at this. Prezi Video is helping us do that. This is the container for my presentation today, and I hope you enjoy it and find it useful. But I want to share my top tips outside of the software that you actually use for how you can be a good online presenter. So here we go. A little bit about me. My name is Russell, as I've already mentioned. I run a presentation design and training agency called The Presenter. Thepresenter.com, just listed at the top there next to my email address. And I've been doing that for nearly 10 years now. I started as a Prezi trainer and a Prezi designer. I'm now really grateful to say that that's been extremely successful, and I have a team that work for me. We build presentations for clients all across the globe, and I get to bore people to tears all across the globe as well with my many webinars and online trainings just like this one. And when I say bore them to tears, they do actually find it really useful, and I teach people how to be better presenters and how to master tools like Prezi and PowerPoint and various other systems that can help you present in much better and more interesting ways. So I am one of Prezi's official independent experts, which sounds very glamorous. I guess it is kind of glamorous. It means that I'm one of a very small few hand-selected group of people that Prezi has given this kind of title to. It means we work very, very closely with Prezi. I have great relationships with Prezi, and I love everything that the Prezi team has done to help improve the presentation space. They are literally changing the way that we communicate, especially in business and education. It's phenomenal, the amount of impact that they've had and positive impact that they've had. One of the things that I will mention, this is a recording of a webinar. So if you have any questions after this particular presentation, I would suggest that you go over to LinkedIn and find me on there and just ask me a question either directly through LinkedIn. You can of course email me as well. I'm actually way more active on LinkedIn than I am in my own inbox these days. So definitely LinkedIn is the place where you'll probably get a quicker response from me. So it's Russell Anderson Williams or linkedin.com/in/Prezi designer. So let's get stuck into these top tips. One of the things that I did before setting up this session is I asked a simple question to everyone in my network. How do you feel about presenting online? How confident do you feel? And the vast majority of people were a little nervous. Some were nervous but not really scared, and there were a few people of course who were absolutely terrified. So that's why I decided to pull together this presentation and share my top tips with you. So without further ado, in true COVID lockdown fashion, let's take you through these top 5 tips. Now, the very first one is very simple, and this one actually happens outside of your presentation software, outside of Zoom or GoToMeeting or whatever it is that you're deciding to use to deliver your online presentation. And this is about your environment. Now, when I say environment as my top tip, what I actually mean is your environment, everything that's around you. So everything that's in my space here right now has been placed here to give you an impression of who I am. So I'll give you an example. One glaringly obvious example is this bike wheel you can see here. Now, I am a huge bike nerd. I'm an absolute nut when it comes to biking. My wife hates it when we're out shopping and I see a bike shop because I just have to go in and look at the stuff. I mean, she does it with handbags and things like that. I do it with bikes. So I have my pride and joy, my road bike up here on the wall, ready to take out at a moment's notice and just go for a quick cycle and help get rid of the cobwebs from my mind if I'm struggling throughout the day. But the reason I like to have this in the shot that you can see right now, this is the same view that everyone will get when I'm delivering online training to them, or even just having an online meeting with some clients to talk about a new design project. The reason I like to have it there is because it makes for a really good talking point. I now know that a lot of my clients are really into biking. In fact, more than I would have even realized before I started having this in shot. And the reason I know it is because they see it there on the wall, and the ones who are into cycling start asking me about it. What type of bike is it? Where do you cycle? Things like that. I have a few clients that I've been cycling with now, and I never would have got that if I hadn't had really thought about my environment and what I want it to say about me. I want what you can see behind me to be a reflection of myself. And just as a little aside, I do also have, some of you will know I'm a complete Star Wars nerd as well. There is a Lego Millennium Falcon directly behind me here as well, and sometimes that makes an appearance. And again, I know that there are quite a few clients of mine who are Star Wars nerds. Now, the reason this is so important, I'll give you a real life example. I spoke to someone just recently who was a training consultant, and their entire business was at jeopardy because they delivered all of their sessions in person. Of course, that business model in terms of delivering online, delivering in-person training sessions during the COVID crisis just isn't going to happen. You can't get people in a room in one place. You essentially are going to be breaking the law right now by doing that. So they had to move online. What I discovered in speaking to them, they got in touch with me for a bit of advice. And just in 5 minutes of speaking to them, I found out that they are known in their industry as being the Avengers nerd, the superhero nerd, he called himself. And the reason for that is because in his training content, he likes to use images of superheroes. So Spider-Man makes an appearance, Iron Man, the Hulk, you name it. There's every imaginable superhero that you've seen in the Avengers movies. They all make appearances in his different training presentations. That's a really nice theme that he likes to use throughout those presentations. And he wanted to continue that. But when I spoke to him, this was the kind of view that I got. I couldn't really see anything behind him. The walls that were behind him were very blank. But he did have pictures of the superheroes that he loved in his home office. They were just on a completely separate wall. So I said to him, let's move those. Let's put those into shot. And he said, I feel a bit strange about doing that. And my response was, well, look, you're already known for this. This is what people know you as, and this is your talking point. This is how you build a relationship with people who will be new to your training sessions. They're going to see it in your training materials anyway, so let's think about your personal brand and bring that stuff into your home office as well and put it in the view of your audience. And so I think he actually went out and got some new frames as well to really tidy up those pictures. He put them up behind him. He had a really nice space, a really nice home office that he did that in. Put them up behind him, and he also added a whiteboard as well, because a whiteboard was something he used quite a lot in his in-person training sessions to sketch out ideas and explain concepts. So he put a whiteboard behind him as well as those superhero images. So for him now, he has the perfect environment to really get across who he is. Most people know who he is anyway, so that's a nice reminder to them. But there are lots of people who are brand new to his training. Now they know he's the superhero nerd. He's continuing on that personal brand. So my tips here are use your environment really well. People don't really want to see tired old wallpaper, picture frames hanging off the walls. I've even seen some really terrible instances where there's been dirty washing hanging in the background. We want to make sure we avoid all of that, of course. That's not good. Add some character to your environment. So I've added my bike, I've got my Lego Millennium Falcon. There's lots of books and things that you can see. Sometimes if it's Christmas, I will put some Christmas lights up here behind me to give it a more seasonal look and feel. You can do that very easily, and you can add some character to it. And this is all an extension of your personal brand. If you realize the importance of personal branding, as you should, this is part of it. This and how you present your content is part of your personal brand. Now more than ever, we are inviting people into our home. So let's make sure that this environment is a good reflection of who we are. A messy environment will say a lot about us. So let's make sure that we're saying the right things. So tip number 1 is think about your environment before anything else and get that right. Tip number 2 is to do with audio visual. So one of the most important things, of course, about presenting online is to make sure that people can hear you and see you really well. So here are my tips on that. But before I go into details, a lot of people ask me, is it okay to have a cat on my desk or on my lap when I'm presenting online? I've got to say, as much as I love animals, it's a no-no from me. And please don't hate me. I'm an animal lover. I'll bring the cat back just for the rest of this presentation. But there's been quite a few instances where cats have jumped up onto people's laps whilst they've been talking to an audience, and then the cat has turned with its back to the camera, and the audience gets a view of the cat's rear end, and that is not a good look for anyone. So please try and avoid that. If you have a cat and it's likely to jump up onto your lap, I'm sure it can live without you for an hour or so. So maybe park it in another room and shut the door, unless it's going to scratch the door and make noise. Just try and get it to be behaved as you can. Anyway, so let's get on to the audio visual element. Now, a webcam is important. I am obviously using a webcam for this presentation so that you can see me. Here I am again. Now, my webcam is at eye level. That's why you can see me so well. Quite a lot of the time, I see people presenting with their webcams that are looking right up their noses at them, and that is not a good look at all. You need to really think about your webcam, and if you don't have a very good webcam built in to your laptop, you may want to look at getting an external webcam. This is a Logitech webcam that I also use from time to time. That is a HD webcam, and it just gives me a much better, crisper picture as and when I need it. The new laptop I've got here has quite a good HD camera built in, so I don't necessarily need to use it for this presentation. So make sure you've got a good webcam. Also make sure, more importantly, that you have good audio. This is absolutely crucial. Now again, I see a lot of people when they're presenting online using Bluetooth headphones, normally some of the really big clunky ones that make your head look very strange, or some of the Apple AirBuds. Now, that's absolutely fine, but I have had experiences in the past where I have used Bluetooth headphones and they have run out of battery because I simply forgot to charge them before the session, or they just weren't very good and they only gave me about an hour or 2 hours worth of charge. So one thing that you might notice about my setup right now is I have a wired connection. This is really important, and I would encourage you, whilst your Apple AirBuds may look really cool, Please don't rely on them. And if you are going to use them, that's fine. But make sure you have a backup that is a wired connection. These are never going to run out of batteries. They are never going to let me down. And they give me really good audio that I can hear. So when I'm speaking to people and they're asking me questions, I can hear really well. And I have a little microphone built in, which means you can hear me really well. So I would definitely recommend that you get rid of Bluetooth headphones and go for a wired connection instead. Absolutely crucial to take your audio visual setup very, very seriously indeed. And like I said, make sure you have a backup. Now, even though I have a wired connection, I also have a backup. Over here, I do have some standard Apple headphones that I can plug into my mobile phone. And the reason I do that is because quite often when you're presenting online, you're using a lot of bandwidth. And if, like me at the moment, you have a wife and 2 young children at home who are probably using the internet at the same time as you're presenting, you might want to switch from talking through your laptop, so talking what we call voice over IP and using more bandwidth, to talking through your phone. So I have a number that I can dial to call into my online presentation and deliver the audio part of my presentation in that way as well. Now, one last thing to mention about audio visual is, and you may have noticed this right now, I am actually standing up. So I just changed my image here from the lady sitting down to be standing up. I always stand up when I deliver a presentation. I would never, ever, you couldn't pay me all the money in the world. Well, maybe you could pay me something, but I would never ever sit down to deliver a presentation. The only reason I would do that is if I had had a broken leg at the time and doctor's orders were to sit down and keep it elevated. Apart from that, I would always stand up. And there's a few reasons. For one, you've probably noticed that I talk a lot with my hands. My body language is really, really important to me as a presenter. I know that you are going to get a much better experience by me using my body language to explain key points to you. If I don't, then it's straight away a completely different story. You don't get any of the emotion, you don't get any of the feeling, you don't get any of the emphasis. Maybe from me you do, because I use my face a lot to talk as well. That's why I have so many wrinkles on my head. But standing up enables me to do that. If I sit down, I'm normally much closer to my laptop and people can't see my arms or my body. So you lose all of that amazing non-verbal, what we call non-verbal cues from your body language. And that's a really, really crucial part of communication. So please don't take that for granted. If you don't have a standing desk, which is the setup I have here right now, you can jump onto Amazon, type in standing desk. There are a million different things that you can buy from there. Some are expensive, some are really, really cheap. And if you don't want to buy anything at all, grab a coffee table, just a really small coffee table that you might have in your home. Maybe you've got one next to your sofa in the lounge, and plonk that on top of your desk, put your laptop on that, and just try to get to a setup where your webcam is at eye level with you. That means your audience is going to feel like they're standing right in front of you, or you're standing right in front of them, and you're going to be able to project your voice much better. Really, really important to take that seriously. So good audio is probably even more important than the visual element of this. Cabled headphones are an absolute must. I would start with these. I would have this as your default setup. Bluetooth, I would stay away from, if I'm honest, just in case they go wrong on you during the session and drop the connection. Stand up and project your voice as much as you can. Really, really crucial. And one thing I didn't mention, but it's worth thinking about, use different camera angles. So I talked about my environment here for when I'm presenting to you guys right now, but on the other side of my office that you can't see right now is a whiteboard. And sometimes when I'm delivering online training, I will change my view completely. I will move my laptop around, and I'll do that mid-session. I'll switch between this view and that view, and I will use the whiteboard to write stuff on so that my audience can see and take in that information. So don't be afraid to change your camera angle, but try to avoid the camera angles where the camera is looking right up your nose. That's not good at all. And that normally happens when you're sat at a desk hunched over your laptop and your laptop is much lower than you. So not a good setup at all. Now, my third tip, just as important as all the others, plan your what if scenarios. And what I mean by that is before you deliver your online presentation, think about, what if my camera dies? What if my headphones stop working? What if my internet connection drops? There are a huge list of what if scenarios that you should have a plan B, C, D, E, and F for. If you want to get this right and you want to deliver a successful online presentation, you need to be realistic. Things are going to happen that are going to be out of your control, and you need to have planned for them instead of panicking mid-session and messing up the flow of your content and the flow of your delivery. So, what do you do if your camera starts to fail? Maybe you have got an external camera, maybe it's very old, and the connection to your laptop is not working, it's getting a bit flaky. What do? You should have a plan for that. I've already showed you my backup camera. So I have a Logitech HD camera that I use on a regular basis. I've got a new laptop lately though, so that is now my backup camera. I don't use it that often anymore, but it is there should I ever need to. What happens if your audio fails and you get this really difficult situation where everyone is typing into the chat box of your session saying they can't hear you, and you're replying with, "Hi, can you still hear me?" And it gets really, really awkward. What are you going to do if that happens? Well, when I'm delivering an online presentation, I always explain my what if scenarios and solutions before I start delivering my content. So this presentation you're seeing right now was actually delivered as a webinar to over 150 people just recently. And at the very start, I told them that if we lose connection for whatever reason, join me over on LinkedIn. And I had an image that I showed them at the very start. And it was that same image that I was going to post to my LinkedIn account. They would be able to spot it there, and I would post all of the information that I was going to talk about in this webinar. I also, as an extra backup, recorded this session before my webinar. So what you're seeing right now is a recording that took place before the actual webinar, the live version of this, to over 150 people. And if, luckily I didn't have to use this, but if for whatever reason my internet connection died, my laptop caught fire, whatever should happen, I could send them all the recording. And they knew that. So it put them at ease, it put me at ease. Even if people on that session were having some technical difficulties of their own, they knew that they could hang up the call. They weren't going to miss anything because I was going to send them that recording anyway. So always practice your presentations. That should be something that you always do. And when you practice an online presentation that you're going to give, record it and have that recording somewhere as a backup. That is absolutely crucial for you to make sure you've got that in place, because you just never know what's going to happen. Now, this guy didn't know what was going to happen, but he became an internet legend a couple of years ago when he presented. He was actually being interviewed by the BBC News, and as he was talking to the news presenter, these two amazing little minions stormed into the room and just decided they were going to sit and watch Daddy talk to BBC News. It was absolutely hilarious. If you didn't see it, go away and Google it. Go onto YouTube and you will be able to find that. And what was even funnier was how the mother then crawled into the room afterwards and slowly dragged those children out and shut the door. It's worth a watch. It is comedy gold. And he did very well at controlling that situation and ignoring it. But to be honest, if I was him, I would have probably picked my daughter up and got her involved. I think that would have been a much, much better thing to do, to rather than just ignore her and face plant her out of the way. But these things happen. We don't have control over them very often. So plan for every eventuality. Really, really important. Practice those scenarios as well. So get some of your colleagues involved in your practice sessions and tell them to try and throw a spanner in the works and see if you can deal with it. That will kind of put you at ease when it comes to the live scenario. Have a backup in case all else fails. So like I said, record your online presentation, have that in place, maybe upload it to YouTube or somewhere secure. And if you do lose internet connection, or if the people you're presenting to lose their connection, just tell them you're going to send them the recording and then maybe have a brush up Q&A session with them over the phone when they've got time to do that. So plan your what ifs. Absolutely crucial when it comes to online presenting. Tip number 4, and again, this is kind of common sense, but really, really important. And it's be a good host. Just make sure that you do tell people how you are going to run this presentation, what you're going to do, how they can interact with you, and what to do if things go wrong. So all of those things I've kind of already mentioned in my first few steps. But one thing I do an awful lot when I'm presenting online is I tell everyone I am going to mute you. And this is not me being rude. This is just so that we can control the flow of the session. I will give you a chance to ask me questions. You can do that in the chat box. You can do that through a few other different ways by raising your hand with a little button you've got in the GoToMeeting control panel that I tend to use. That's a system I use for online presenting. But tell them how to do it. And if there is anyone that really, really struggles and just can't connect, like I said, tell them all from the very, very beginning. If that's you and you can't connect, don't panic. I'm going to send you a recording. In fact, send them the link at the very beginning. And if they aren't able to get onto the online session, they know they've got that there as a backup in their email. So just be a good host. Help them out as much as you can, but do remember that if one person is struggling and you've got 50 other people that are ready to go, it does make more sense to continue your presentation, but make sure you go back to that person a bit later on. Pick up the phone, give them a call. Oh, I'm really sorry to hear that you couldn't get onto the session. Did you figure out what the problem was? Maybe it was your internet connection. Help them out, because you want to be a good host. If you can do that, then they are going to know that you are safe hands when it comes to online presenting. They're going to want to hear from you again. They're going to want to join your webinars again. And hopefully they're going to work with you again in the future. So set those ground rules. Mute the audience is a big tip. A lot of people don't mute their audience, and it can be a nightmare when you're presenting online. Explain how to interact and then follow up with your audience as well. Make them feel like you actually care about their experience in your online presentation, as you should. My 5th and final tip is one that you probably would have been expecting me to start with. A lot of people think, well, what about the visuals? What about my slides? How should they look? Well, when it comes to online presenting, that is absolutely crucial, of course. But all of the other stuff I've mentioned, your environment, your audio visual, being a good host, planning your what if scenarios, all of those things are absolutely crucial and actually more important than getting your visuals right, because you could spend all the time in the world on your visuals, but if people can't hear you correctly and they can't get connected and things go wrong technically, then it was all a waste of time anyway. So let's focus on this. And it's really, really simple. Visuals do matter, but they matter even more when it comes to online presenting. So what you can see on this computer screen at the moment is a simple layout you'd expect to see on most slides. I'll call them bullet points for now. I don't like talking about bullet points. I actually loathe them, but let's call them 8 points of content with icons next to them. Of course, I've just copied and pasted here, but you can imagine that having lots and lots of different information on the screen. Now, when it comes to online presenting, you actually have no idea whatsoever the size of the screen that people are viewing this on. So I've delivered quite a lot of online presentations where people have told me in the chat box that they are just viewing the presentation on their mobile phones, because of course you can download the Zoom app, you can download the GoToMeeting app. There's no guarantee that people are actually going to be at their desk like you are watching this through a laptop. They could be walking their dogs out in a field somewhere, viewing this on their phone. So we need to be really, really conscious of that. So instead of having 8 key points on the screen like I've got at the moment, I would change that to a key point over 8 slides. If you've got 8 key points on one slide, split them into 8 slides. Make everything bigger and bolder so that you guarantee people are going to be able to see it. Now, to be honest, even in terms of just general presentation advice, I think this is kind of a sound thing to do. You want people to focus on one key message at a time, drive that home with what you're saying and doing as well, and then move on to the next key point. That will help people digest your information much, much more. And also, one thing I would do is avoid animation. And you might say, well, you're zooming in and stuff like that. I'm doing that very sparingly at the moment, but particularly if you use PowerPoint, try to avoid flying in from the left, flying in from the right, those kinds of animations, because let's face it, they don't really help you deliver your content. So keep your animations to an absolute minimum. Another reason for that is because you have no idea what quality internet connection the audience has. And if there's a really complex animation that you've spent hours building and you're really proud of, when you present it back, it might look great on your screen, but there's no guarantee they're not going to have some kind of time lag or a jumpy screen that actually doesn't show that animation properly. So keep it simple. And like I said, the biggest point is spread your content out and give it breathing space. Give it enough space to breathe. Every point is just as important as the other. So give your content room to breathe. And my final tip for you, if you haven't guessed it already, is try Prezi Video. I've used Prezi since 2009. I was one of their early adopters, and I'm still really, really proud to say that I'm one of their official independent experts. And I'm blown away by the feedback I get when delivering just a standard Prezi presentation to a live audience. I also deliver a ton of online training and webinars, and the fact that I have this amazing Prezi video tool to do that through now is just absolutely incredible. It blows me away that Prezi has the foresight to create a system like this. And now that we're all on lockdown, which I know is not going to last forever, but I'm pretty sure is going to change the way in which we communicate and present, we are going to realize that presenting online via Zoom or GoToMeeting or whatever it may be is actually a better option than jumping in a car and spending hours and hours on the road every week. So get to grips with Prezi and get to grips with Prezi Video. You have those tools at your disposal. Why would you not explore them? If you want any help or advice on how to use Prezi Video, I deliver lots and lots of training sessions on that as well. This is a screenshot of me looking really awkward. This was me actually teaching someone just the other day on how to use Prezi Video, and I used this very presentation to explain how I set everything up. So if you want some help and advice on that, my email address is at the top, russell@thepresenter.com. If you don't want to know how to do this stuff yourself, but you want a team of experts to just take your content and build an amazing Prezi video or a Prezi presentation or even a PowerPoint presentation, if you need a presentation expert, do get in touch with me as well. We have an entire team of presentation designers that specialize in this and only this. It's what we do 24/7. But I hope you found these top 5 tips really useful. I look forward to being invited to one of your online presentations or webinars. Please drop me a link. I would love to see you present using these tips. And if you have any comments at all, please get in touch with me on that email above. So I hope you found it useful and take care.